I'm interested in oil, and I always thought that Alberta had almost all of Canada's oil, a little bit in BC, a little bit of Saskatchewan, but the oil sands got 99% of it. But now comes news from Quebec that there may be tens of billions of barrels of oil in La Belle Provence. Who knew? Well, Professor Germain Belzile knew. He wrote the report about it. He's a professor at the Business School of the University of Montreal, and he's with the Montreal Economic Institute. He joins us now. Hey, Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you're so very welcome. You bring news to me. I tell you, I did not know that Quebec had oil reserves. I knew there was some shale gas there. Tell me about these oil reserves. Where are they, and what is the nature of these reserves?
Okay, well, the explorations are not complete right now, but we know for sure for the moment that we have about 35 billion barrels of oil under Anticosti Island in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. That's unconventional oil that could be extracted through fracking. We also have conventional oil in the Gaspé coast, about 250 million barrels, and we also share a big oil field with Newfoundland and Labrador in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, Old Harry, and there are about 6 billion barrels there.
You know what? I don't want to get too personal, but Old Harry was my nickname in college. You know, you mentioned Newfoundland, and I'm glad you did, because Newfoundland is now a have province, largely because of resource development. Do you think that Quebec will look at these oil pools that you referred to and see it as an opportunity to increase their economic standing? I mean, let me throw some statistics on the screen here. Here in Alberta, where we are a largely oil economy, and it's not the dominant economy, believe it or not, but it's a big part, our average household has a $71,000 income. That is compared to Quebec, where it's about $50,000. So that would be like 50% more. That's almost 50% more money per family because we develop our resources. Do you think your fellow Quebecers want to grab a hold of this fossil fuel the way Newfoundland did, the way Alberta did, and lift yourself up economically, Professor?
I believe so. In fact, our study was welcomed tremendously yesterday and today by the media and by the people also. People are really surprised to find that Newfoundland and Labrador is much richer than Quebec now. And that's because of resources. And people were very surprised to learn that we have a lot of oil in Quebec, and it could be the ladder to get out of our dependence, in fact, on the rest of Canada. So, in fact, I believe that things are changing in Quebec. Mentalities are changing.
Well, I hope you're right. I mean, I'm looking at, we're on our show today, we're talking about some of the student protests. And of course, your government has a deficit of, I don't know, what, about $1.5 billion. Just the royalties from the oil, I mean, whether you spend it on tax cuts or subsidized tuition or just not running a deficit,
or pay
all of a sudden you have, you have more policy choices. So even liberals, actually, Professor, especially liberals should want this oil production because that's where all the tax money comes from.
I was very, very surprised to hear liberals and green activists to read them in the papers yesterday. They told us that in fact we should look at that option, and perhaps we should look at nationalizing the resource. In fact, but at least they're open-minded. Even they are open-minded towards oil extraction in Quebec. So that's it surprised me a little.
I don't like hearing talk about nationalization. That reminds me of Hugo Chavez. But at least if you nationalize something, that implies you're going to develop it. Let me shift gears a little bit about, you mentioned that some of this oil is shale oil, which has to, I think you said it had to be accessed through fracking. I presume it's in some geological formation like shale. Tell me about natural gas in Quebec, because I understand Quebec has an enormous amount of natural gas that could be liberated through fracking, which has made various U.S. states like Pennsylvania and North Dakota very wealthy, cut unemployment way down, but Quebec has self-imposed a moratorium. Do you think that Quebecers are starting to wake up to the fact that they could be rich based on energy instead of having to import it? And Quebec imports a lot of its oil from OPEC. Do you think Quebecers will start to become more industrious with regards to oil and gas, or do you think this fracking moratorium will continue?
Well, Up till now, I believe that the green movement has, they were the only people reacting or giving their opinion. But now I believe that it's possible to shift the public opinion on this subject. For the moment, there's a moratorium on gas fracking in the province. So basically, the government decided not to make any decision on this matter. But as we go ahead, I believe that once Quebecers start to understand, and it's starting now, start to understand the huge value of these resources and the impacts on public finances, but mostly on personal finances. Because Albertans and other Canadians in rich provinces have much higher incomes than Quebecers. Once people start realizing that, they'll be a lot more open-minded towards, let's say, a responsible extraction of natural resources.
I think you're right, and if all those protesting kids had $100,000 jobs waiting for them in the Quebec oil patch, maybe they'd get to work instead of bumming around the streets. That's just my commentary. Professor Belzile, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.